Right. Well, good morning, everybody. And I think it's Happy New Year, probably. We've been having a little break with the retuning your firm. And it's now back at New Year and an exciting new set of guests to come and share their thoughts today and into future episodes, which I think you're probably aware by now are being done on a fortnightly basis. So let's quickly look at this slide before I get engaged. So we're looking at tech, clients and trends. So over to me. Welcome, everybody. So what I'd like to do first is to talk you through who are the excellent panel today. And we have two panelists today. Unfortunately, Francesca is are not available this month. But what I'd like to do is to quickly talk through them and then having done that to ask you to complete the poll in the usual way, and then we'll invite them to give the 5-minute slots, 5-minute talks on their particular topics, and then we'll go into a long and I think really quite interesting panel session. One thing that's quite interesting, and I was kind of commenting to our panelists in the green room, is that I think for the first time in 65 episodes, all excuse me, all three of the founders have the word founder in their job title. So our first guest is Derek Southall. And Derek, as you can see, he's the founder of Hyperscale Group, a very distinguished lawyer who was a partner in a big firm based initially in the Midlands, now covering the whole of the UK and indeed into Canada and other places too. About 3 years ago, perhaps a bit more, he will tell us, he founded a group called Hyperscale Group and is very much, as you'll have seen from the intro for today, the invite I sent out, very heavily involved in recent development in the legal tech world, innovation, and he's got a particular interest, which he wanted to share today, as to what's actually going on if you scratch below the surface and to what extent how we actually dealing with a cottage industry, or maybe there's actually a group of aggregators who are doing something which maybe we should be knowing a bit more about. So he's going to be talking a bit about that in general, but in particular, but generally in what are the recent developments in legal tech. And I think that again should be really interesting for everybody on the call. We've got lots of people in today, which is great. So our second is Mark Lacy. And Mark is the founding partner of Alinea Consulting. Now, those of you from law and accountancy, I don't think will probably have ever heard of Alinea Consulting in the same way as there may be some law firms that Mark in his very important area of cost construction, and it will not have heard of you. But Alinea are a very interesting organization. They break many of the rules, as we'll hear today, around issues to do with management, very much focused on a group of partners from a larger firm who form their own group. He is one of the founding partners. And Mark's going to be talking about a topic that I think is important to everybody and therefore far beyond his construction world, which is how do you deliver certainty of outcome and optimum value to your clients? And that's, I know, sort of nirvana for a lot of people, but I think what Alinea have done, and he'll talk a bit about how, have actually shown that that is possible. And one of the key themes I think we're going to hear a lot today is teamwork. And I think we're looking forward to hearing what Mark has to say on that. So thanks very much, Mark, and welcome for today. Okay, so what are we going to be talking about today? Well, as I mentioned, fantastic panel. And obviously now want to just quickly give you a little bit of forum news, which I think is quite helpful. But first of all, we had a very launch reception last night for our 2022 Management Excellence Awards. Now, they are in their 20th year, which is quite important. What is a bit, arguably a bit depressing, I suppose, is that we're still pressing the same theme, which is that management's contribution to the business should be recognized. We've had the same theme for 20 years, and unfortunately, it's still necessary to run with the same theme. There's lots of information on the website and other places. So I won't go through the detail, but just to say that that's something that, excuse me, I encourage you to get involved in. Do think about it. You've got till the end of February for submissions, and then the ceremony is in June. The second area I just wanted to cover briefly was, for those of you who are members, you may have had a note from me, but we are changing the basis of management team membership, as we call it. So instead of being a sort of 6 for the price of 4 deal, it's now more or less anybody in your management team at a suitably senior level for essentially the price of 2. So much more attractive, I think, in many ways. And we think that will lead to many more people joining our events and getting involved and growing this community. So that came in a week or two ago. If you're not watching the videos from these past shows, do so, because quite frankly, the hundreds of them people are, and we'll be adding a few more from today, as they say, but it's a good service. And the other last thing I wanted to mention, I'll just show you a couple of thoughts on it, is we're about to launch a new service, free service, which is called Mentor Match. Now, Mentor Match is basically a joint collaboration of not just the Managing Partners Forum, but also the PM Forum. And what we're doing really is we're identifying and bringing together mentors and mentees. In other words, people who want to be a mentor, people who want to be a mentee, and then giving them a place where they can actually engage and track all aspects of that relationship. Now, why are we doing it? Because we're seeing a lot of people at the moment focusing on retaining scarce talent. And one way you can do that is help them with their career, because people tend to leave organizations rather than managers. We will talk about that later. So we're going to give you the ability to actually match with somebody from a different organization, because what we find is all too often internal mentorships have too much politics associated with them, free of charge, as I mentioned. Basically, anybody from any professional services firm, any consultancy can be a mentor. There are some restrictions on mentees in marketing, but apart from that, anybody can be a mentor or a mentee at the same time. You put some information in, there'll be some training for people who are novices. Whilst there will be an algorithm doing the heavy lifting, nobody is going to be matched. All matches are done by a human being. Test sessions are encouraged, and at the end of it, everybody's going to be asked to rate the performance of each other, a bit like in the Uber cab, and that could in turn then become another mentorship performance score. So as a selection criteria. So I think that's going to be something that we're really quite interested in rolling out, because we think there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be really interested in that. So do look out for that email when it comes across. What else are we going to say today? Well, I just wanted to say that the government remains very supportive of what we're doing, and our poll results, as you can see in this quote, are seen to be incredibly valuable in analysis during these dynamic times. What are we then doing today? Well, I wanted to basically just talk you through some of the feedback from the last poll that you did. And some of you may remember that was back in November. And we looked at management team performance reviews. And what we came up with was that whilst leaders and managers felt they were fairly effective at setting objectives for those who reported to them, they didn't seem to be as good at making sure that then that performance was then delivered, with only 30% of the firms actually looking at reviewing at the end of every management project. I'm not talking about technical legal accountancy projects here, client projects, talk about management projects, because we know most people on today's show have management roles. And a further 30% appeared not to give feedback, less than annually or never, which I don't think is a very good recipe for a well-managed business, quite frankly. Reviews, as you again probably would expect, are mostly the responsibility of the managing partner or an evaluation committee. That seemed to make some sense. The key inputs were previously set objectives and personal behavior, which kind of thinks maybe you're just constantly looking backwards, but not that simple, I realize. Self-assessment is the main tool. The most important aspects were felt to be praise and focusing on strengths. But I think, again, in reviews, it needs to be a little bit more balanced than that, probably. The one thing that we did pick up, though, was that the link from the review process to compensation was, let's say, not strong. So in other words, there really doesn't seem to be as much correlation as one would expect between the performance of somebody being properly reviewed and how much they're being paid. So I'll just show you 2 or 3 slides. The first one is how consistently performance is being reviewed at the end of every management project. Now, some of you I know will have small screens, so I'll quickly tell you what it's about. The one on the far right is part of how we work. Next to that is regularly. In the middle is sometimes, and rarely, and then somewhere not part of how we work. But unfortunately, only 10% say part of how we work, 20% say regularly, so that's about 30, and 70% are either sometimes, rarely, or sometimes or rarely. So I think that to me says that there is some fairly inconsistent review. Now, I know when we talk to Mark, he'll tell us, but that to have a project where the review is on that basis, I think would not be considered very effective somehow. Again, this one's a little bit busy, but you'll get to see it now. Feedback is infrequent. And again, all I really want you to do here is just look at the red line, which is the informal feedback, and then the blue line, which is the formal feedback. And at the bottom, you've got like weekly, and then it goes monthly, quarterly, 6 monthly, annually, and up to never at the top. And what's quite clear to me was that the informal feedback is sort of nudging around quarterly to 6 monthly, whereas the formal feedback is annual. Now, I don't believe personally that if you only give somebody feedback on performance or their progress on those sort of frequencies, that you are really helping them develop their career. And the last one, just to mention again, which I said before around compensation, that the link between performance reviews and compensation is neither strong nor weak. So you've got about 30% say it's strong, 50% in the middle, that's the tall one saying it's neither nor. And then you have about 20% in the weak area. So not a very strong scorecard on that one, I don't think. So that was the poll that you kindly completed last show, which was, if you recall, back in November. And what I'm now doing is going to ask you to complete today's, and this is quarterly now, our sector tracker. Now, for those of you who've done it before, you'll know it's the same set of questions. And the topics that we cover are things like what's being discussed at partner director meetings, what are your business priorities, the management activities and the barriers to optimal performance, what levels of activity you're projecting, your headcount, new workflow over the next year, to what extent people are home working. That's still very much an open question, and therefore what impact that has on your office space requirements. And lastly, what are some of the key metrics for successful leadership? So what have we got? Well, the one that's coming through strongest is finance and cash flow at 74%. And that's pretty much on trend. We've certainly seen over the last year or so, that's been very high. Marketing comes in second. And again, that's pretty much as we've found. And then you've got people and clients running at a sort of another set. And then there's areas like supply chain, sustainability, risk, public policy, Brexit really aren't getting much of a look in. Remember, it's just the top three. So what else can we say from that? So the second question is, what are the things that people consider will help most to achieve the firm's goals? And coming through quite strongly there is the area of getting the best from your team. And I'm going to be talking about teams shortly. So that was something that Mark will find interesting, I'm sure. Whether the reality is the same as the things that you think will help most is a good point. Communicating effectively, again, another people-based item. It comes in very strongly, and I think those are the two that really stand out looking at the results on that particular question. So where are the top priorities of the firm over the next 12 months? And what's coming through there is, and it's interesting actually, maybe this is just January, but we always seem to find that in the first one in the new year, develop a clear purpose and strategy. I think this is called New Year resolution maybe, seems to come through quite strongly. So that's sort of 61%. And then the second, just looking through, the one that comes through then is about skills and capabilities. Again, I mentioned earlier, the whole piece around very active jobs market. So you want to really develop your people skills and retain them. That comes through quite strongly. And again, those are the two I think that really stand out when I'm looking at that particular question. In terms of what are the things that get in the way, things that are preventing the firm from achieving its optimal performance. And if you remember back a year or two ago, it was all about Brexit, and then it was the pandemic. Now, the big one that's coming through now is lack of skills and employee turnover. So again, we're shifting very much to a people driven space. And in a management sense, what you could argue, I guess, is that for quite a long time during the pandemic, people were thinking in terms of managing or finding the demand. In other words, how do we get the clients in to feed the machine? Now it's how do we get the people to feed the demand? Because guess what? We haven't been anything like as what should we say, impacted by the pandemic as we thought we might be at the outset. That came through quite strongly. So again, those two come through very strongly on that question. Question 5, where do you expect to expand or contract? Well, everybody is in for expansion. Mathematically, that could be challenging, I guess. But anyway, 83% saying modest expansion and 9 no change or significant. But nobody looking to contract in terms of the level of activity. Nobody looking to contract in terms of the new work, and nobody looking to contract in terms of the headcount. So pretty strong messages there. And those ratios are really quite, 80% plus of you looking to expand. Let's hope there are clients out there to keep you busy, as they say. In terms of office space requirements, about the same. I think people have now some people have decided that about 20% saying they're using less, 70% about the same, nobody more. Well, actually, nobody really more. So that, again, pretty much consistent. What about how long time of people are likely to be working from home over the next year? And the big one coming through there is around half of the time at home, half of you, and around a quarter of the time at home, 35%. So all of the time at home, not really, 3/4 of the time. So it's definitely, it's a sort of a 2 to 3 day a week type scenario, which I think we know have already seen. And the last one I looked at was, look, what's the contribution of leadership? Obviously many people on the call today who are leaders. So how good are leaders? And Andrew Kakabadze, who is the professor of leadership at Henley, has looked at these stats, and he says that our sector is outstanding, which is his word, I think. And if you compare that with most PLCs, you just won't get anything close to what we're getting here. So our leaders share strategic options, 57% of you. Our employees are valued at least as highly as other stakeholders, 70%. Our leaders are accessible, 74%. Transparent, 48. The one that actually, the one that came through a lot in the pandemic, but seems to have kind of slipped away now, is the whole piece around pain. So the pain resulting from unexpected disruption is shared equally at all levels of the firm. That was quite high during the pandemic, and it's kind of fallen away now. So that's interesting, I suppose, in a way. The dominant management style is challenge and support for some of you. About a third of you think remote working has increased productivity. About 40% of you think that your key clients are on track for post-COVID success, but 57% think that your firm is on track. So there's a bit of a mismatch there. As I said before, it's great to project demand and expansion, but if the clients aren't there, then guess what? You may not achieve that expansion. Okay, well, I'll stop sharing now. Enough from me, I think. And I'm now going to be looking to introduce our first guest, who is Derek Southall. So welcome, Derek, and come and talk to us today about the way that legal tech has developed, and in particular, the role of the aggregators. Over to you, sir.
Brilliant, thank you. So Derek Southall, founder of Hyperscale Group. We're sort of technology, digital and operational advisory and implementation business. I'm going to do 2 things today, the one of which is talk about the role of the aggregators and what's actually happening in legal tech M&A. And the second thing, I'm going to move on to some just sort of key trends that we're seeing from clients in the market. So I have one slide, which I'm going to share now, which hopefully everyone can see. Now, basically, the origins of this slide are that basically there was so much going on in the marketplace. We were talking to clients who just thought we just got to start mapping this to understand the big picture. So most of this has happened relatively recently. But as an aside, if anyone wants a copy of this slide, let me know. There's a mailing list, so we send out updated things. So just drop me a line. So some key points from this slide. I mean, headline terms, there are around 10 aggregators. Not every piece of M&A is on here. There are smaller pieces of M&A going on, but this is where people have done typically above 5 deals. A few key points to note really about what it means for us. You'll note along the bottom, there's effectively ownership, and there's a lot of private equity ownership. I used to be a private equity lawyer, and I think in big picture terms, what this could mean, the typical behavior of private equity houses are they invest to grow and get a return. So they will want to expand our customer base. They will want to expand revenue from existing customers. They may want to streamline operations. And another thing to bear in mind, they're always looking for an exit. So we're seeing 10 aggregators here. We may see in 6 months' time, 6 aggregators because the 6 have bought 4. So a lot happening in that space. But the second trend to notice, I think a lot of people have been critical of some of the smaller legal tech suppliers about investment in R&D and quality of support. Actually, this could be really good. You know, we've actually got some sort of professionalization of some smaller businesses that were innovative. So there's a nice combination. You should see some benefits there. One client said to me, will this mean cost reductions because of economies of scale? I think that's a nice notion. I suspect the reality of it is there's going to be a lot of investment in combining these products. We're going to talk about sort of the cost increase dynamics shortly, but basically, you know, I suspect that you're going to see less choice and probably some prices going up, and we're certainly seeing that from some clients already. I think there's a big piece around capability. So when you look at what capabilities a law firm would need, if you said, I want capabilities relating to comparing documents, doing all sorts of smart stuff with documents, you could look and go, well, hang on, Litera both own now Workshare and DocScore. You could then say, oh, capabilities about forms. Well, you look at Advanced, you pretty much own the main form suppliers in the market now. CRM, you look at what Intap have done. I think they've done 3 CRM acquisitions. So I think there's an interesting point emerging really about is all the capability getting into smaller places, and are we going to see the competition? I think there's another interesting point which could be a positive in that some players, so let's just pick out, say, Access Group and Advanced, they operate in legal, but they also operate in other markets, and they've also got other products which could be suitable for legal in other markets. So I think there's going to be a really interesting point about how they bring these products into the mix, what the combined integrated offering looks like. Integrations should be better, and that is certainly some dialogue which we've heard from some suppliers. Everybody who's run disparate systems or best of breed systems will know the challenges about integrating them and keeping your data strategy together. There are some big promises being made by some of these suppliers, and it'd be interesting to see if they deliver on them. I think one bit we have got to be mindful of, and that's these business owners are there to make money. And if you've got 3 versions of something and a move to cloud, would you really want to sort of do that with all of them, or are you going to end up with one system and end of life some others? And I think we are going to see some of that, I suspect. I've also written down a point, nuts and bolts. So we've heard all sorts of sexy things about legal tech market. When you look at the what the acquisitions the aggregators have made, they're mainly about operational stuff. So don't get me wrong, there's a bit of AI here and there, etc. But it's not the what I call necessarily all of the sexy end of the market. And again, it'd be interesting to see what happens in that space. So I'll move on from aggregators now to some of the other trends. I think a big one, those of you who've listened to me before will know about this missing middle thing. So for years, law firms have typically operated on a practice management system, documents and email management system, if they're lucky, a bit of case. We're starting, and I don't think that's fit for purpose. I don't think it's enough to help the practice groups in the way that we're now seeing the demands to do so. What we're starting to see is the emergence of some products like Foundation Software, Kim Technology, ShareDo, which again, just help people do that stuff a lot quicker and better, which is a positive development. We're seeing a real increase in no-code and low-code products. And again, this would be Kim Technology, Fliplet, the no-code app platform, which again are letting people deploy things quicker. And there isn't a firm out there I know who's got all of the resource that they need to automate, 50 different products in X number of practice areas. So these no-code products that can be deployed are becoming a bit more of a strategic imperative for some of the businesses we're working with, because it really lets them help the practice groups to help themselves. MS365, massive growth in MS365. Our corporate clients were quicker at taking it up more than law firms because law firms had legacy to deal with. But basically, everybody we know at the moment is looking at it and going, God, there's a phenomenal stack here. There's a huge amount we can do with it. We're paying for it anyway. Should we use it to the max and start decommissioning some of these other products? And what is our MS365 strategy? What skills have we got? Who do we need to partner with? That is a massive theme. And if there's one theme to take away from this, if you haven't got an MS365 strategy, focus on it, because it's huge. Microsoft, 125 billion turnover, they're going to dominate a lot of markets. I've written down data strategies. For years, law firms have had data, but many law firms have basically had financial data and a few emails and documents. People are now really seriously looking at their data strategy, what they want to get out of data, what things they can take to their clients. We looked at a product yesterday as well that scanned everything that had been negotiated in a particular area to realize the middle position that you reached. The people are thinking much more intelligently about that. But dare I say it, the need to do this is coming at a time of proliferation of collaboration products where the data is going all over the place. So there's a few things people are trying to work with, but that's a big one. Massive increase in people looking at knowledge management, massive increase in looking at experience management tied in with pricing, massive increase in education of people. So the bigger firms are launching all these academies to educate people about all this stuff because there's all the tech, there's a gap. There's a gap in service delivery where the tech teams and innovation teams are doing great stuff. It's not reaching the clients because a lot of the lawyers don't know about it. So at the high end, you've got things like academies, you've got individual training sessions, you've got products like, different e-learning products, professional alternative, all sorts of things happening to basically bring the lawyers on, which is essential. Increase in partnering and alliances, people realizing they can't do everything. 365 is a great example. Small business are working with 3 people in IT. They're basically, with best of intentions, made a bad job of putting 365 in place, quite a few security gaps, and they've just now realized that the world is just getting very complex. You can't be an expert on everything. And also the job of an IT director is to make the right things happen. It's not to do things. So people really now beginning to get relationships, IT directors as a service, innovation as a service, around them, and are focusing much more on the orchestration of things. Cost increases, I alluded to this earlier. We are seeing some material cost increases coming through year on year now from some of these suppliers. One client we talked to the other day, 230% price increase on one product over a 4-month period. And basically the problem is, in the world of property, you sign a lease for 20 years, rent reviews, break clauses. The world of cloud computing, you don't quite know what you're going to be charged next year, the year after. And yes, you can get out, but that's not an overnight thing. So I think vendor management, cost management strategies are really appearing high up. And again, there's lots of tactics to deal with that. One basic one people are looking at is let's use 365 more. Let's minimize the number of vendors and minimize the number of products we've got. Final thing is we're starting to see, this is specific, a big increase in cross-organizational working and data exchange, particularly in areas like real estate. It's been overdue. People have talked about it for years, but you're now really starting to see some people do it, say, why are we re-entering this data? Why aren't we looking cross-organizationally at processes? They're fascinating. So if I were to summarize some real changes in the vendor market, that is a moving feast. We're going to see some positives and negatives come out of that. People really looking at their structures, really looking at how they can better help their lawyers, educate their lawyers, and do the things to actually drive improvement in the practice groups, and a big focus on cost management and 365. That's me, Richard.
Oh, thanks very much. That's great. And obviously very happy to explore some of those topics a little bit later. Perhaps now I can turn to Mark. Welcome, Mark, as I say, founding partner of Alinea. Won't be mentioning lawyers, I suspect, very much, but that's not the point, because what you're talking about today is much more to do with management and teamwork and how you can build a business through really good management. So over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. I'm a founding partner of a business called Alinea, one of 6 founding partners. We formed in 2013, wanting to bring a sort of fresh and more dynamic approach to my profession. And Alinea actually in Spanish means alignment and coming together, and that's partly relevant to why we formed our firm. We are now just over 100 strong, and we're very much seen as a sort of market leading business within London. We operate across a range of sectors, residential, commercial, offices, which we talked about today, life sciences and retail. And our clients include many of the sort of leading property companies within the UK, property investors as well as overseas investors. We're a firm of chartered surveyors, chartered quantity surveyors, so we're regulated by the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors, or the RSCS. I'm telling you this because I work in a different sector to what the people on this call generally are. Now, a quantity surveyor is one of 4 key members of a construction project team. And we work alongside the architect, the structural engineer, the services engineer, and our role is to be the custodian of all commercial aspects. So to influence the design as it is taken forward, to make it cost efficient, to estimate the construction cost, to procure the building contractor, to assimilate the contracts, and to pay the contractor and sweep up disputes at the end. And we possess a particular expertise in tall buildings, and we've acted on 10 of the 13 tall buildings that have been built in the City of London over the last sort of 10 years or so. And the London market is London office market is a very sophisticated, dynamic market. Is seen as the bedrock of international property real estate investment, and therefore what we do and the advice that we give to our clients to inform development viability calls on projects, to inform their commercial interests is critical. So investment-based investment needs to be informed by certainty. And the construction industry itself has a number of particular challenges around improving productivity, a skills shortage, the carbon agenda. It's also an industry that suffers from reputational problems and is often bemoaned in the press. So against the context of all of this, how do we deliver certainty to our clients and optimum value to our clients? And I'll talk through a few of the themes. I think firstly, you need to understand your client's business, and that sounds a bit cliche, but part of the reason we formed our business is that a lot of our clients we were working with 10 years ago were saying to us, you're not aligned to their needs, you're not responsive enough, we're not seeing enough of you on our projects, the level of expertise was poor, and clients want advice from a trusted advisor. So we sought to address that by creating a business that directly responded to our clients' needs. And we spent a lot of time talking to our clients, listening to our clients, and building a proposition for the market that was tailored specifically around that. And it sounds very simple, but we found it very successful. And the best compliment a client has played to me over the last 10 years is they've said to me, if we're not in the room, we trust you to represent us. So knowing your client, being focused on what your client's needs wants is absolutely key, particularly in my line of work. The second point I'm going to talk about is about project environment, culture, and people. And this is related to construction projects and the environment within my own business. And if you think about a major construction project, there's a lot of people involved with it, not just the operatives on site. A major project could have 1,000 operatives on site on any one day. But in terms of the professional fees on a project, they generally account for 15 to 20% additional to the construction cost. So that's a lot of fees, that's a lot of people. So in addition to the core design team members that I've mentioned, me, the architect, the engineer, and so forth, there's probably another 15 to 20 different organizations that advise on a multitude of things, from planning, rights of light, legals, party walls, geotechnical ground issues, acoustics, letting, legals, and so forth. So the reason a construction project often struggles is less about tangible factors about the budget being wrong or a decision's been made late or something has happened. We believe it is much more about people issues, about competence, about experience and having the right people, and critically the team not working together. And successful projects start with good leadership. They start with strong client leadership and getting the team focused and organized on the objectives. So good teamwork all sounds a bit cliche, but it is so important and it is so often overlooked. Giving everybody on the team on the project a voice and providing an environment for collaborative working and having clarity on what those objectives are. We call that Align for Success, and we talk about that a lot at the start of a project. Now, we're a consultancy, we sell people, and people are our biggest asset, and most businesses will say we employ good people. Well, we believe to exceed clients' objectives and to create a high-performing environment, you need the very best people. And if you employ the very best people, clients will come back to you for work on a repeat business. And 80% of our business is repeat business. And we've done this by putting our people agenda right at the top of our business strategy, by creating an environment with a very strong focus on our people. Our core values are teamwork, trust, and excellence. And we've created a really strong culture of inclusivity, transparency, and respect. And that's really enabled us to attract the best people. It means our churn is low. And guess what? That means people are motivated. It means they function well, and they'll go the extra mile for our clients. Then people, our team, and our community is motivated. And we're really proud of the awards that we've won around that. The third theme I'll talk about is how we advise our clients. Now, buildings are becoming increasingly complex, And what that need, and they include more specialist engineering systems, more complex facade systems. There's a need to have more off-site prefabrication, programs are more complex, and so forth. What that means is that even in my line of work as a chartered surveyor, you need more specialist skills so you can give your clients certainty around those key facets of that advice around engineering, around facades, and so forth. And it enables you to participate in those conversations. Technology is key to us. Designers now work extensively in digitally based 3D packages, so we need to be able to interface with that. So investment in technology has been fundamental. And finally, innovation is key. Being open-minded to exploring how you can do things better, how you can build better, how you can build faster, how you can build more cost effectively. Mediocrity is not good enough, and I don't believe anybody should come to work to accept mediocrity. And the final point I want to talk about is not shying away from delivering difficult messages and fronting up advice to a client when it's less than positive. And indeed, this is relatively topical in some of the sort of key headlines that have been coming out in the press over the past sort of 2 or 3 weeks. And on a lot of construction projects, things go progressively wrong because consultants and clients will not front up difficult calls and giving difficult advice when it needs to be given. And we as a business are great believers that if there is a difficult message to be given, it should be fronted up and we should go and talk to our clients, because the truth will always come out. Richard, that's it from me. Thank you.
A really long, interesting list of things that Mark's talked about in terms of innovation, in terms of teamwork and all the rest of it. What are the key lessons that you think law firms can take away from what you've heard from Mark?
I think that one of the challenges for law firms, I think every lawyer I know has generally been hardworking, has been pretty committed to their clients. But what they tend to be is very sort of driven on a job and don't think big picture. I think from what sort of Mark said about both the industry and how his business is performing, I think we all need to stand back a little bit more and question. We need to give a bit of time to say, hang on a minute, is this the right way? Is this the best way of doing things? I think, like I say, so many people are just driven by the now. And don't get me wrong, lawyers are busy people. There's a lot of work, a lot of demands. I don't think as an industry, we've probably been good enough at doing that. And I think we're entering into an era where we absolutely need to raise the bar on that. I think tied in with that is a point about the model. I mean, fundamentally, that there are other ways of making money we see in other markets. And at the moment, sort of still think there's an overdependence on do X job on whatever basis, be paid for it. You start to see firms talking about subscription models. You start to see some of the new alternative legal service providers doing 10-year contracts over a period of time. I think, again, we've got to be smarter about the making money as well.
Do you think, based on that, just kind of following the point, I mean, if you look at the margins in the construction industry, they are, what should we say, modest. The margins in law firms have typically been maybe 10 times greater on occasions. Do you think that is an imperative? Do you think people are just a bit complacent because they're making a lot of money?
Yeah, I think that's the case. That is the case. Although I think what has always been interesting is the fact that the margins in law are disguised by the fact that many of the top earners are equity partners, and I think you start to sort of need to that. So I'm not denying the margins are high. I think it's very difficult to sort of get sort of actual comparisons. But I think you're right. I think ultimately the leaders of these businesses, meaning the partners in the broadest sense, are in a position where actually at the moment, everyone's doom and gloom about, oh, the future's going to change, etc. And it never does. But sooner or later, it will do. And all you've got to do is look at the main exchanges. So, look at the FTSE 100, AIM, Fortune 500. There's a dominance of businesses which are, for example, digitally driven, which have overtaken, say, engineering businesses. You don't have to be a genius to work out that that will eventually wash through professional services. It's going to be a when, not an if.
Mark, just coming back to some of the things that you were saying a second ago, you say that you would only want to hire the best. How do you find the best? Do you hire for skill? Do you hire for attitude? How do you make sure that somebody coming into a team will be a key team contributor? Because we've often seen that you can have a football players, for example, the 8 best football players in the world can't play as a team, and people who are perhaps less skilled but actually work really well as a team. How do you actually approach when you're growing your business and hiring people around that issue?
I mean, clearly we need to employ people who are technically competent and proficient in discharging their professional obligations, but for us, culture and behaviors is absolutely key. And again, some people here may think that's a bit cliche, but we all used to be partners in a business called Davis Langdon, which was the biggest and best business in what we do in the UK, if not the world. And that business employed the best people, and and its culture was fantastic. And we have tried to replicate here a really strong culture. So for us, in our appraisal process, it all starts with culture and core values. And everybody in my business could cite our core values of teamwork, trust, and excellence. And I find it unforgivable when you go out you're talking to people on the sort of network, or talking to business owners or senior people, and they'll talk about, yes, the culture in our business is really, really strong, really important. And I'll say to them, okay, what are your core values? And they can't cite them. I think that is unforgivable. And we spend a lot of time at our annual conference, at our team meetings, not indoctrinating that, but positively encouraging the benefits of that. And we hold our people and our partners to account on that. And me and my fellow equity partners, we hold ourselves to account on that, so we can lead by example.
The other area you mentioned, Mark, was innovation, which is a word that is kind of everybody talks about and sees as a good thing. I mean, How does that translate into something practical for your management style, do you think?
Well, I think innovation in the construction industry and professional services in construction is quite difficult. It tends to move quite slowly. Why? Because to the point that's been made that margins are relatively low, and therefore the opportunity for investment in technology and innovation is somewhat constrained. So I think for us, it's about focusing on tangible elements that we can. That we've got the ability from our profit to focus that on. So I think we'd like to innovate more, but we find that in some respects we are constrained by our sort of size and scale. And certainly something we're talking about at the board at the moment is the need to invest, and the need to invest more in this.
And I mean, there's sort of 2 levels of innovation, because there's innovation in terms of the projects that your clients are developing, but there's also innovation in management. And I mean, I would say that a lot of what you've described today is, for many people, is innovative. Put it that way. I think you would probably think it's just good common sense. But where do you see management's next frontier, if you like? What are the next sort of set of management challenges, given that you've clearly ticked a lot of boxes to date?
I think the next the sort of challenges that we're going to be facing in consultancy and professional services for us will be around, I think, needing to it'll be about professionally enabling and skilling our people to. One thing I didn't explain during the course of my piece was that I think the quantity surveyor or the construction cost consultant will, over the course of the next 5 years, become a construction cost and carbon specialist. So we're going to need to be refocusing and getting our business very tuned around that, around enabling and recruiting a different set of skill set, and needing to align and change how we what services we offer, how we contract, and how we insure ourselves. That's the focus and emphasis for our business. So
the management challenge is to stay
market relevant.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Derek, just picking up that point around carbon and ESG, I mean, to what do you think we're suddenly going to have a whole group of ESG lawyers now? Do you think that the law firms have got a role to play in that context?
It's happening already, and there's various people. I mean, I literally yesterday got something from some seminar from us. So law firms are trying to reposition themselves. I think what is fascinating is there's a group I'm involved with called Litig, which is sort of like it's focused, if you like, on technology and operations in the legal market, and we've tried to look at this whole area, and I'll continue to look at it. So big, and what we've discovered basically, there's something like about 32 standards. Getting to the bottom of what great looks like is really, really hard, and it's a moving area. So I think it's an essential area, something everybody wants to do, but how they go about it, what it means for their organization, and the level of sort of research on probably blind alleys is probably too large at the moment. It's not great. It's a really difficult thing to get right. But yeah, definitely the legal market is repositioning to try and play its role in that, whatever it looks like.
Thanks very much. And what do you see as the other priorities for the legal market at the moment? Perhaps stepping away a minute from the tech hat, what are the other sort of challenges, management challenges that your clients are talking to you about?
Some of the biggest things are there is this absolute massive sort of talent shortage, war for talent, which is a really difficult area. And there's some stuff that appeared in the Times yesterday where, I mean, some of the salaries, particularly from the city firms for newly qualified, are just going through the roof. You're talking, I think one American firm has quoted 140,000 a year for a freshly qualified lawyer, and I think it might have even been a trainee. It was just bonkers. But there's a whole point about, is this a bubble? Will this explode? Will there be a backlash with it? I think that's a massive area. People are very concerned. On the one hand, people have been really pleased because there's been some great results because people have been working really hard in lockdown. But on the other hand, people are very concerned about the mental health of their people, and actually almost this ticking time bomb. There's a story I was party to the other day where it was all fine apparently, and they were doing all the check-ins. Somebody's time recording stats went bonkers. They checked in with this individual who pretty much had a nervous breakdown on the phone and just completely lost the plot over a period of time. I think that bit now is getting a real concern. And we talk about hybrid working and everything, but the reality, we don't really understand it. We don't understand what it means. We don't understand what it means conceptually, how good people are managing themselves. So those are two big priorities. The obvious, everyone wants growth. Everyone's worried about cyber, and the other big thing, I think people have talked about this for years. We're certainly seeing a lot of work in this area, people getting under the skin of their practice groups. So it's almost, we've got our infrastructure sorted now. We want to get the best property group. We want to have the most efficient commercial group. There's a lot of that going on at the moment. I think the firms have gone really from back internally focused to really externally focused in practice groups and lawyers. Sorry, slightly long answer.
No, it's great. We're sort of into the last minute. Gosh, because time flies when you're enjoying yourselves. Mark, just final question to you. Hybrid is something that mentioned a minute ago by Derek, and said that nobody really understands it. I mean, you're in a world which is very much non-hybrid in terms of the properties that are built are fairly tangible. But at the same time, I imagine a number of your people are working remotely or in different ways. And how is that working out for you?
It had been working fine. I mean, we've been encouraging our people to come back in the office, but equally giving them the opportunity to work flexibly. So even though construction sites are 5 days a week, people are working flexibly around that. It works well. The interesting thing that we've seen picking up on the mental health point and the well-being point is a real desire and passion, energy for our people to get back in the office. So we've had to almost tell them quite actively over the past 3 or 4 weeks, please only come in please don't come in unless you really need to. People want to get back to the workplace. They've been missing what the good workplace can offer.
Well, I think, unfortunately, our time is up. So I would like to thank our panel. And second switch. I'd like to thank Derek, who has been, I think, giving us not just the update on technical, but also an update on some of the things that management are thinking about in terms of his key clients. I'd like to applaud Mark for taking an industry which is not normally presented as being a people-based industry in the way that you presented it, and clearly your success is self-evident. So thank you for sharing some of the tips and that you've learned along the way. I'd like to thank you as a great audience. Thank you for completing the poll. We will be putting the results of the poll up fairly shortly, and also obviously the videos from Derek and Mark will be appearing in the YouTube channel. And if you haven't yet checked that one out, go to the forum website under Retuning Your Firm, and then you can search across 100, 200. And lots and lots of people are doing that. So thank you again for being a great audience. Happy New Year. I think we're still allowed to say that at this stage in January. I'll be back in 2 weeks' time with some other interesting guests, and only remains for me to say thank you very much. Bye for now.